When Troy Endicott's mother took him to John Hunter Hospital's emergency room a fortnight ago Saturday, she and her son were sent home. Doctors had diagnosed his condition as gastroenteritis. But Cheryl Endicott believed it may have been something more after the family all fell sick after eating pizza. A few days later, Troy's condition deteriorated.
He was walking around the house like he just didn't know where he was going, just bumping into things and laying down on the floor and going to sleep just like you think someone was in a coma.
It wasn't hard to see that the child was extremely sick and ill. At that stage she was lapsing in and out of consciousness, and that must say something to a doctor.
But unfortunately it didn't. By the next weekend, Troy slipped into a coma, dying early this week after being rushed to a Sydney hospital. His parents now believe an earlier diagnosis may have saved their child and are calling for a coronial inquest into his death. Hunter Health refused to publicly comment on the matter today, but they did release this statement claiming the decision to first send Troy home was made on clinical grounds, not on the availability of beds. The hospital also insists it took 7 days for him to develop the symptoms of the fatal condition. Apparently only the second case in the Hunter this year. Autopsy results will be officially released next week, but are expected to confirm the condition as hemolytic uremic syndrome, a severe case of food poisoning.
We do not want this to happen to any other people, because, he's a 2-year-old baby that we love dearly, and I just don't wish anybody to go through the pain.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News. The men and women of Steel Choir filled the corridors of Parliament House in Canberra today, but perhaps it was this plea from Newcastle Lord Mayor John Tate that offered the Prime Minister the most food for thought.
And can I say this, Prime Minister? At the moment, the Hunter region feels like someone who needs a bit of assistance, and it will be very, very comforting if you could put your hand on our shoulder and say, "Can I give you a hand, mate?" And I would say, indeed you can, Prime Minister, indeed you can.
But while the Lord Mayor didn't walk away with any funding commitments, he won a personal meeting with the PM. The day also brought the region some much-needed optimism.
But rather it's an optimistic embrace of the fact that Newcastle and the Hunter has not only the capacity but also an enormous potential to change.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News. When the Newcastle Steelworks closed its doors last month, economists said the impact could see up to 4,500 people join the ranks of the unemployed. But at a Hunter Valley Research Foundation breakfast today, the outlook was a little more optimistic. While the region still has one of the state's highest jobless rates, now around 11.4%, it seems the economy is still growing. The main problem now is structural unemployment, which means the next challenge is finding the right person for the job.
One of the factors driving structural unemployment is a mismatch of skills, and that is people who lose jobs in some of the traditional areas of mining and manufacturing find they don't have the right skills for the new types of jobs which are being created.
Still, the impact is expected to be cushioned by several positive trends, including an increase in consumer confidence and continued growth in other sectors like business.
The economy is more diverse, it's stronger, and I guess if something of this nature has to happen, it's better to happen at a time when the economy is strong and growing so that we can absorb these shocks, and that's essentially the situation that we have at the moment.
Helen Kapalos, NBN News. The Hunter Street West premises of Proclaimed Place have sheltered the area's homeless for the last 2 years. But in that time, the refuge has provided a less than satisfactory neighbour to nearby businesses in the community, dealing with the associated problems such as alcoholism. They now hope a $750,000 pledge by the state government to build a new crisis centre behind the old SES headquarters at Tyers Hill will provide a more efficient model.
The current situation with Proclaimed Place won't be replicated in any situation that we move it to. The idea that Docks and community housing has is we change the model so that we don't replicate this anywhere else in Newcastle.
Newcastle Council agree the Elizabeth Street site is a good location, but say ultimately it's up to the community.
If the community is accepting of the location, the council is very keen to support it.
Meantime, the City Centre Committee says it's so confident with the plan it will put up its own funds if necessary.
The business community will do whatever it can to put some resources into it, but it's a very good sign of where Newcastle's heading if we can get all the stakeholders together to come up with a solution that we think everyone will find useful and will work for the people involved.
Experiencing the highs and lows as a player, Michael Hagan's rugby league rollercoaster ride has taken many turns in recent years. After coaching Canberra to within a game of the grand final this season, his contract with Norths for the coming season fell through as the Bears went insolvent. A few weeks later, and Hagan is Newcastle's First Division mentor.
I'd like to welcome you officially, Michael, and I think we'll work pretty well together.
A popular Knights player and captain for many years, Hagan suffered the brunt of anti-Super League sentiment when he joined the Mariners.
Well, you know, that was a very difficult time for me and for a lot of people back then, and I don't think it's something I'd like to personally go through again. That was a difficult period, and it's time to move on and get on with other things.
Those things will be to develop younger players towards higher honours in his 2-year deal with the club.
I think that's primarily the role, is to develop young players that come through the system, and I know the 19s have done very well this year, and we want to see as many of those people progress to first grade and try and give as much support to Warren as I possibly can.
Hagan beat a field of 9 applicants that included 2 Knight lower grade coaches Craig Miller and Steve Burriston.
Fortunately, there was only a small amount of the product left in the hold. Had the hold been full, I think we would have had a lot of problems on our hands.
The Auckland side looked to be facing a long flight home early on, John Bonavoglia taking off and finding the back of the net. The Breakers pressed the attack, successive shots keeping the Kings busy. Auckland only found the woodwork in reply, while Greg Owens found himself down and out. The Breakers then seemed to lose direction, only denying the Kings with some frantic defence. The Auckland attack continued into the second half. Ex-breaker Robbie Middleby tried for the equaliser, but in the end it was scored by his coach Winton Rufer with less than 10 minutes remaining. Both sides had chances to take the win, but in the end they shared the points. One of the oldest surf contests in the country, the Matara Classic wasn't blessed by good weather for its 37th running. Chasing $4,000 prize money and points on the Australian Championship circuit, competitors did their best in the dicey conditions. But after 12 heats, organisers decided enough was enough. The event called off until tomorrow. The show did roll on though in the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic. 75 of the world's top riders contested the first stage in Sydney, Dutchman Jan Coates taking the win. The Classic heads to the Hunter tomorrow. The Harlem Globetrotters at least were high and dry today. The now legendary troupe of basketballers put on their first of two shows at Newcastle Entertainment Centre this afternoon, playing up to the crowd and the camera. The Globetrotters' handling skills defy both description and the laws of physics, and they'll do it all again later tonight.
The Bulahdelah Kalungalok section is considered one of the most dangerous sections of the highway between Newcastle and the border, but from Wednesday the new 22-kilometre dual carriageway will bypass an area where up to 80 crashes, some fatal, occur each year. The $145 million project was officially opened by the relevant state and federal government ministers today, but the bipartisanship hit a rough patch when State Minister Carl Scully was challenged by federal counterpart Mark Vaile over promised funds for the next stage of the project to connect the Lakes Way to the new deviation.
To date, they haven't honoured that commitment, and the question remains, is the New South Wales Government going to participate with the Council and the Commonwealth in building the Link Road?
Carl Scully says he has, but that the $6 million in funding is solely for construction.
I've told the local community, $6 million there to help construct the Lakes Way. No problems. But Council's got to show me that it can afford to foot its part of the bill.
The local council, however, remains hard-pressed financially, claiming it has more important priorities.
I'm not sure that our residents would want to see us fund a study of this nature when other roads are falling to pieces, and that's the dilemma that we have.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Since being put on public display, Port Stephens Council's draft koala management plan has angered conservationists and landholders alike. Both groups want council to go back to the drawing board.
We have to preserve our lands and our rights, but we've also got to make some sort of attempt to protect the numbers of the koalas and their habitat.
And it seems that's exactly what council is planning to do. Councillors have put a motion to be heard at tonight's meeting for the exhibition period to be extended and a consultative committee established.
What we need to do is sit down, work our way through it, apply a truckload of common sense, and perhaps then we'll have a workable plan.
Also before council tonight is a proposal for a subdivision in South Strait, Madawi, which cuts through a koala corridor. Council will decide whether to impose a 40-kilometre speed limit during the koala breeding season. But not everyone agrees with the restrictions.
What we should do is remove the trees that are going to create the problem, plant twice as many trees on the other side of the road so the koalas don't need to cross the road.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Day 4 saw the 74 riders facing the longest stage of the Cycle Classic. Some of the international riders weren't deterred by the 154-kilometre distance, but it was 2 Australians who eventually took an early lead. Tom Brooke and Cameron Jennings left the field in their tyre tracks, including tour leader Jeremy Hunt. The pair set the pace for more than 100 kilometres before being chased down. Eventually, Newcastle Criterium winner Max van Heeswyck broke away with 3 kilometres to go to take the leg and the record for the most number of stage wins in tour history.
Today I felt real good. I said to a teammate, today I have to win.
Britain's Jeremy Hunt still holds a 13-second lead going into tomorrow's 2 Central Coast stages. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
The water was sparkling at Newcastle Beach today, and according to Beach Watch, it's rarely otherwise. Hunter Water carries out regular testing for the monitoring body and says new secondary sewage treatment plants brought online in the last decade have made all the difference.
We've spent a lot of money, upwards of $150 million, in improving our coastal facilities, and I guess the results, I think, are there for everyone to see, that the beaches are very clean.
Beach Watch tests the coastal water quality between Port Stephens and Wollongong, and to the Hunters' credit, it's the only region that meets the faecal coliform guidelines 100% of the time. However, there have been periods of elevated bacteria over the past year, usually coinciding with heavy rainfall.
The indicator isn't an indicator only of human pollution, it's an indicator of pollution from seabirds and dogs and cats, and if you get heavy rain, basically you will clean off anything that's been dropped into a catchment, and it ends up in the receiving water.
Some say regular water users still need to be selective about the times they swim.
The ocean outfall, the deep water outfall at Burwood, while it's great when the currents are going the right way, when they're not, like in a southerly or after a heavy rain incident, I wouldn't go swimming.
But ask ocean lifeguards like Jeff Sargent and you'll get the full story.
I'll give it a 10 out of 10 now. That's excellent, yeah.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. It'll take at least a year to build the first stage of the new terminal at Carrington's number 1 and 2 berths. It'll handle up to 500,000 containers, allowing Newcastle to compete with the East Coast's existing cargo ports.
We'll be able to now challenge Sydney and Brisbane for some of the commodities that until now we've been unable to load successfully or unload successfully.
The project is a joint venture between Tolls, R&H Transport and the Newcastle Port Corporation. The Eastern Basin Wharf will be extended and a rail siding connected to the main northern line.
It lessens our reliance on coal as a single commodity through this port. We know they're the world's biggest coal port, we know we're Australia's largest tonnage port, but we've got to get away from that reliance upon a single commodity.
And the Lord Mayor says the new facility will fill an international niche.
This is specialised containerisation. The ships are designed to be able to load and unload themselves, and their destination are the island ports in the Southern Pacific and those ports that don't have container cranes.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Okay, where are you going?
With exceptional wet seasons over the past 3 years, many cricket matches have been called off due to unplayable field conditions. The New Lambton Ovals Board, however, set about to rectify this problem on Monday.
Once this is finished, which it will be this afternoon or in the morning, and then it's all rolled and watered, we believe they could even play it on Sunday.
It's a view not shared by the Newcastle Cricket Council, which says the ground should be repaired over the Christmas break so as not to interrupt current competition. According to the council, Newcastle is already suffering from a shortage of sporting venues.
The difficulty with sport in Newcastle at the moment is that there are at least 5 and probably more cricket teams who can't play cricket because of the lack of grounds.
However, it's claimed that if the repairs aren't done now, it will be another 12 months before it is looked at again.
Most importantly, it's an excellent time climatically for the restoration of the ground after the work is done.
Adam Harper, NBN News.
With Greg Owens out and Lee Sterry less than impressed with the Breakers' performance against Auckland, it's no surprise there's been some changes to the side for Saturday's clash with Gippsland.
We're certainly looking for a stronger midfield line, that's for sure, in work rate, commitment, and certainly still we want to have some ball-playing flair in there.
Chris Tancheski returns to the squad after 4 weeks in Youth League, nursing a hamstring injury, while Glenn Sprott and Peter Junknowitz have been named in the starting 11, with Vasco Trapesky relegated to the bench. Changes aside, the team faces a tough task, with Sterry rating the Gippsland game as a hard away encounter.
If it's not the worst, it's the second worst, so it's not a good road trip, but at the end of the day, last year we got in there and got out of there and got 3 points.
Only 6 months ago, Lee Sterry was waiting to be re-signed altogether. How times have changed. Team management today announcing the coach will stay until 2002.
We've only scratched the surface with what we want to do, and it's great pride that I've been installed with a further 2 years on top of the year that I've got to run now.
Sterry says the deal allows him to look to long-term plans, and both he and team boss David Hall want to head to Britain in the next few weeks to foster relations with clubs like Watford and Manchester United. The aim is to set up a formal relationship where promising breakers could trial overseas and vice versa.
They're probably best 23, 22, 24, 25-year-olds are not even looking at a first-team shirt because they're allowed to have as many Europeans as they like, or overseas players. So I think there'd be at least a couple of players on the Manchester United books that would do us a job this year.
One breaker who's already trialled with an English side, Chris Tancheski. He returns to the senior squad this weekend after trying to recover from a hamstring injury in the Youth League, the same injury that cost him a possible berth with Aston Villa in the off-season.
I've thought about it time and time again, but you got to lift your head up and get on with the job. And now, I'm here to do a job for Lee and the side.
It's the closest bodyboard championship battle in the Australasian Tour's history, with no less than 7 competitors in the hunt from the outset of today's heats. The surf wasn't sensational, but it didn't matter. The Central Coast Luke Cousins won, making enough of an impression to earn a berth in tomorrow's finals. For the top 6 finishers on the tour, there's an added bonus. All go on to compete at the Moray Pro in Hawaii.
We've got the most amount of seeds in the world, 6 going into the pipeline contest, the biggest contest in bodyboarding in the world, and they're fighting it out. They really want to get there.
Also on the water, Competitors in the Lake Surf Classic. A dozen paddlers contested today's 25-kilometre course, winding their way between Catherine Hill Bay, Caves Beach and Moon Island. A big field is expected for a shorter race tomorrow.